As we enter the second quarter of 2026, the entire Canadian Express entry system is operating under heavy scrutiny. On April 13th, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada conducted Round 409. The result was 324 invitations to apply and a cutoff score of 786. For most observers, 786 is an intimidating number. Reaching it typically requires a candidate to possess a near-perfect human capital profile, from master's-level education to high bilingual proficiency and years of specialized work history. This stands in sharp contrast to standard federal general draws, which usually require scores in the low 500s. This raises a question. How can a draw requiring nearly 300 points more than a general round be the most accessible pathway for candidates? The answer lies in the nature of the Provincial Nominee Program, or PNP. In the Express Entry ecosystem, PNP draws are quarantined. They do not force provincial nominees to compete directly against high-scoring candidates in the general pool. Understanding the true nature of the April 13th draw requires us to look past the 786 total and reverse engineer the underlying math. By analyzing the specific components of Round 409, we can see how IRCC uses this pipeline to select candidates from the lowest brackets of the federal pool. The mechanical foundation of the PNP category is the 600-point bonus. Any candidate who secures a provincial nomination receives this massive injection to their federal score automatically. To see what Round 409 actually required, we have to look at the two distinct layers of that 786 score. Once the 600-point provincial nomination bonus is subtracted from the total, we are left with a base score of 186. That was the entry threshold. The lowest-ranked candidate invited on April 13th only possessed 186 points of their own. This base score reflects the candidate's human capital, their age, education, and language skills, before the province intervened. At 186 points, a candidate is effectively invisible in any other federal selection. They have no mathematical path to an invitation through a general draw. Provinces target these profiles because they prioritize specific, immediate labor market needs over the broader human capital metrics used by the federal government. A provincial nomination acts as the final equalizer, allowing candidates with low baseline scores to immediately surpass the 500-point federal competition. This 786 cutoff is part of a larger macro trend developing throughout the second quarter of 2026. This chart tracks the CRS scores against the volume of invitations across the last 5 PNP-specific draws. Looking at the bottom line, invitation volumes are on a downward trajectory, contracting from 362 in mid-March to just 324 in the latest round. This 9% decrease suggests IRCC is intentionally slowing the intake of provincial nominees for this period. However, at the same time, the CRS cutoff dropped 16 points, moving from 802 down to 786. This is an inverse dynamic. Typically, when an intake volume decreases, competition increases, causing the cutoff score to rise. In this cycle, the score dropped even though fewer invitations were being issued. This dual decline indicates that the current supply of high-scoring PNP candidates in the pool is being exhausted. To fill the reduced quota of 324 spots, the system had to reach deeper into the pool to find candidates with lower base scores. Current federal strategy is focused on clearing out the existing provincial inventory, creating a period of higher accessibility for nominees with lower human capital scores. To find where these successful candidates are coming from, we need to look at the actual distribution of the Express entry pool. This data reflects the composition of the candidate pool immediately before the April 13th draw. On the far left, in the 601 to 1200 point range, there were only 351 candidates in total. Since core human capital factors are capped at 600, this tier consists exclusively of candidates who have already received a provincial nomination. The data shows there is effectively no backlog of nominees at the top of the system. The true density of the pool is found much lower on the scale. There are over 52,000 candidates in the 350 to 400 bracket, and nearly 65,000 in the 401 to 450 bracket. These spikes represent the bottleneck for general applicants. These are candidates waiting for a federal selection round that they are currently unable to reach. The 324 candidates selected on April 13th were taken from these crowded lower brackets through provincial selection and move directly to the top. The data suggests that the high tier of the express entry pool is largely vacant, leaving the vast majority of candidates to compete in the heavily populated brackets below 450. This distribution of candidates reveals the real strategic landscape for applicants today. Many candidates focus exclusively on tracking federal draw dates, hoping for a significant drop in the general cutoff. Based on the pool distribution, the federal draw is merely a final processing step for those who have already cleared the provincial hurdle. The provincial nomination stage represents the primary bottleneck in the current immigration journey. Candidates only enter that vacant 600-plus tier of the pool after a province has reviewed and approved their individual application. This means the inflow of successful candidates is controlled by provincial authorities, independent of federal human capital criteria. Success requires candidates to align their profiles with the specific labor market needs of individual provinces, rather than relying solely on federal scores. Beyond the scores, the Q2 draws have also established a highly predictable operational schedule. IRCC maintains a strict bi-weekly cadence for PNP-specific draws, occurring exactly 14 days apart on alternating Mondays. For candidates, the benefit is speed. Once a provincial nomination is secured, the federal wait time for an invitation is under 14 days. The data suggests a clear strategic threshold. If your base score is below 480, competing in general draws is no longer a viable path. For those in the 300 to 450 range, your focus must shift entirely toward provincial expression of interest systems. The April 13th draw is the proof point. A base score of 186 was enough to receive an invitation, provided the candidate had provincial support. Express entry is a multi-tiered game, and the PNP pathway remains the most effective equalizer for those who understand the mechanics of the pool.